So how does technology influence education is a great question, and I think I would answer that by talking about what we call the pedagogical relation, which is a relation between people, a teacher, educator and a student. And normally there's some content involved. Unfortunately, education is currently conceived in terms of transmission between the knower, the educator, transmitting to the students, the ignorant. And this model of education, although often derided, I think it still prevails in the way education is conceived. So I think, from my point of view, a reconceptualization of a relation, a pedagogical relation in human terms, would be much more helpful, which means understanding what goes on in education, not in terms of transmission, but in terms of creating conditions in which something can happen. What's important about the idea of creating conditions is it's not really a technical process. So educators can do certain things, and they use pedagogical tact to make decisions and judgments within, for instance, classrooms, or parents do this all the time. You make decisions on behalf of others about how to present certain things. But how that is then received and taken up by students is difficult to determine. In fact, it's not a technical process. It's something of a lived process, a human process. And so I think education, in terms of thinking of it as a human process rather than a technical process, is really, really important. Some schools or universities which have religious connections often create space for what I'm calling the human relations in a way that, let's call them secular institutions, sometimes do not. I have noticed that faith schools sometimes in the UK or universities that have some kind of faith connection sometimes provide greater opportunity for human interaction and are protecting against what you might call a kind of technological saturation. I mean, this is rather anecdotal that I'm saying this right now, and I would want to kind of support this with more rigorous examination, but my impression is that that's the case. In general, however, you know, we're all aware in the UK of things like the National Student Survey, and every teacher knows that they have to determine clear outcomes for students and objectives. So that kind of creep of what we might call technological thinking, I think, is prevalent in educational institutions. So it is the exception that kind of thinking is resisted, I would say.